right, Cooper DeJean. Tell us the why you wrote this story and a little bit of the background.
Well, the cool thing is, so the Eagles had behind-the-scenes footage that they released, and covering the team for going on 13 years now, it was actually more footage than they typically put out.
I would say so.
Inside the draft room, the particular machinations with the deal, and so I thought that it was. We ask a lot of questions. We're asking questions at press conferences. We're asking questions behind the scenes. But when you get real-time footage of what's happening, and I understand there can be selective editing, right? There's parts of that are not included, parts of that are included, but this isn't acting for the cameras. Like, this is actually happening. And so I thought you can take that footage, combined with some other things that we heard, and kind of weave together a narrative of how the Eagles landed DeJean. And what jumped out to me from watching it, from the comments after the draft, certainly the Eagles' actions, but then that footage in particular is how dogged the Eagles were in getting DeJean. You heard Jeffrey Lurie say on the call to Cooper DeJean that they didn't immediately go to sleep the night before because this was at the forefront. I heard Howie Roseman on a number of different interviews where he said after the press conference, which was midnight on that Thursday. So is midnight technically Friday? Technically. So midnight Friday. After that, they went right back upstairs and started planning how they can get DeJean. And then they go into the draft on day 2. I think it was 6:55 p.m. And Howie outlines what their possibilities are. Actually, Jeffrey Lurie said it was an obsession. They had an obsession with getting Cooper DeJean. And so there were 2 possibilities that really stood out to them, Carolina and Washington. They talked about the Chargers. Chargers weren't interested in their proposal. Talked about the Titans. Titans didn't have a 3rd-round pick, so moving back from 53 would not have been conducive. So the Panthers and the Commanders, and the Panthers, that deal was a little more attractive in the sense that you didn't fall back as far in the 3rd round, but there was competition for that, and that was the Rams. The Rams trade up 239. And once the Rams trade up in the draft room, there's that. The Eagles, they think that.
And the Rams offer not definitely better because it was 52, which is in between the 50 and 53 that the Eagles had, a future second, and 2 fifths. So, it depends how you value the future second. I guess maybe you're betting against the Rams and just planning long term, but that's not a definitely better offer.
Well, if you think next year's draft is going to be better, and then maybe with the Panthers' time horizon, but no, that's a valid point. The Panthers would have traded back and gotten 2 2 second-round picks. But the thing is, I think if you're Carolina, that 3rd-round pick is pretty high, right? So in the Rams deal, you get to keep that 3rd-round pick.
Sure.
But so that's what. So anyways, in the draft room, there's this dread. You see it on Howie's face. You see it on Jeffrey Lurie's face. And then the excitement when they take Braden Fisk.
Yeah, it gives you a big fist pump from
Howie. And then Howie, Howie says call it in. They make the deal with Washington. You hear the calls, obviously, to Cooper DeJean. They have the footage of Cooper DeJean, the emotion that he has in Iowa when he gets the call. Then Cooper DeJean comes the next day, and it's interesting. DeJean visited a week before, the Friday before the draft, and Dom DeSandro, the team security chief, and does a lot more than that. He says to DeJean, "I told you you'd be back," and that was also evidence that this was definitely a guy that they had been targeting. So I recognize in writing it, a lot of it is material, or I should say most of it's material that is provided by the team, right, in that footage. But I thought, A, not everyone watched the whole thing there, and B, you can really kind of put a narrative together about how they landed DeJean.
A couple of questions for you.
Yep.
Do you think that if Quinyon Mitchell had gone 21st, DeJean would have been their pick at 22? Do you think he would have been over Terrion Arnold?
I don't think so. Do you?
I don't, but they seem to really love the guy.
No, but I think there's a possibility that exists where if the 2 corners went in the top 21 and the offensive linemen were off the board, say edge rushers and Brian Thomas fell, right?
Right.
It might very well have been DeJean at that spot. When the Eagles did those scenarios during the week, let's say 6 quarterbacks don't go, right? Or let's say the edge rushers fall, Verse falls or Latu falls.
Chop Robinson went
Chop
ahead,
Robinson,
right?
exactly.
He doesn't go, yeah.
Maybe in that case, it's Cooper DeJean. I do think, and we talked about this before the draft, that there were scenarios that they did in that room where they'd be just fine coming away with Cooper DeJean at number 22.
Right. They would have had to stay.
Yeah.
Which I still think if one of those 2 corners goes, then they're maybe a little bit more aggressive in trying to move up a spot or 2. But I think it's obvious that they had a first-round grade on him and wanted him. The second question is, if the Rams had taken Cooper DeJean at that spot, what do you think the Eagles do?
I don't think they make the trade.
You don't think they make a trade?
No.
You don't think they want... They were after getting a second corner, and they would have been happy to get Kool-Aid McKinstry. You think they wanted the specific player?
Yeah, I think it was the specific player. I could be wrong there. There were, I think, more than one. There was more than one player with the first-round grade who slipped, but I don't know who the other player was. So at that point, I think they would have stayed at 50 in 53.
We all silly like the mayor.